Well, as the world suffers in a bubble of contagion and pandemic, and everything is getting, quite frankly, a little bit depressing, should we take a look at some Doctor Who merchandise to take our minds off it? I think we should. Welcome back to another Doctor Who product review. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the latest Doctor Who book releases from Penguin Books. It is, of course, the era-colliding Doctor Who epic that is At Childhood's End, as written by Sophie Aldred, who did, of course, portray the 7th Doctor, 80s companion of Ace, one of the most popular classic series Doctor Who companions of all time. This book does of course see Ace meet up with the latest incarnation of the Doctor, the 30th Doctor, as portrayed by Jodie Whittaker, alongside her TARDIS team. This book, out of many Doctor Who book releases over the past few years, has in fact received a lot of publicity, and for good reason. It is a very exciting adventure, and one of which, if you're a fan of Sophie Aldred's portrayal of Ace as a companion, this will be definitely up your street, especially if you also like new series Doctor Who. This book is currently available from selected retailers throughout the UK, as per usual, probably Waterstones, WH Smith, no doubt Forbidden Planet as well. You can also buy it online on Amazon. I do believe the recommended retail is around £16.99. However, as per usual, the vast majority of retailers are not stocking it for that. You can get it in a number of different formats, the first of which a lovely hardback book with the dust sheet cover. The text inside is in fact fairly big and large, which is one that struggles to read like myself. There is also a number of different formats available, including audiobooks that are, I do believe, read by Sophie Aldred, as well as a digital Kindle edition, so it floats your boat whatever format you like. However, regardless of how digital we get in this modern age, you can't beat a good physical book. So as per usual with these Doctor Who book reviews, I'm going to talk about what I like and dislike about the book and the general premise overall, and mentioning a few things that I like, sort of the highlights I suppose. However, as per usual, I am going to leave quite a lot of the plot itself a mystery, so if you're interested by what I say throughout this review, you can of course go and check it out yourself. The actual book is it does feel like an epic. It doesn't feel like a small-scale Doctor Who story, which a lot of the other Doctor Who books do feel like, especially the ones that are normally released alongside the series, which this year we haven't in fact had that, which I do believe it is the first time we've not had that for a number of years, and we just had this book. However, it does feel like a grand event. It feels like a story that is worth celebrating, because we do have these two different eras of the show colliding, which some aspects of this book it will be wonderful to see visually on TV. To many of the Doctor Who companions would be one of those actors that could very easily slip back into the role on TV, and it would make sense given that we never seen a solid end to her character on screen. Of course, Big Finish did later give her a lot of development on the audio dramas, going to Gallifrey and many other different things. This story does of course take place in modern times, 2020. We have the development of A Charitable Earth, which was of course first mentioned, I do believe, in the Sarah Jane Adventures by Russell T Davies, and this book basically seizes that idea and uses it. We see Ace with her charity and kind of her working to make the world a better place. I do believe one of the earlier chapters does in fact state that she always, when adventuring with the Doctor, saves the day, and then at the very end they leave. This is kind of picking up those pieces once the Doctor has almost left. She's dealing with the aftermath and the many different things that the world does of course face on a yearly basis, and it does in fact show how far Ace has come from this rather sort of teenage rebellious child that creates explosives in her bedroom, being zapped off into space, and this is kind of going full circle. She is now back on Earth, a normal day-to-day life. She's had relationships with people in the past, and to most extents she is in fact a normal woman of middle age. However, of course, naturally she has this past that has changed and shaped her, which is kind of the main grounding of this book, and naturally when the Doctor bounds into the situation, some things aren't as you would expect. You don't necessarily see the happy reuniting of a Doctor and companion, the likes of, say, the 10th Doctor and Sarah Jane. There is in fact a little bit of tension between them, simply because of the sort of surrounding circumstances that they departed on. As you would expect, this book does in fact deal with the origins of Ace, including many different references to the TV show itself, not just the 7th Doctor era and Ace as a character. However, a few different references to the overall history of Doctor Who, which is a nice touch, and there is a lot of nice little Easter eggs in there, which is just nice to see when you're reading through the book, and there's a few little references to different things that's happened throughout Doctor Who. I was half expecting Magpie Electricals to crop up at some point, because of just a few throwaway lines that that were really nice and just made it feel like it was written for fans, which I am very much getting the impression from this story that it was, because without the Doctor Who fans, as it mentions within the acknowledgements, this book wouldn't exist today. The book itself does have a taste of the darker half of Sylvester McCoy's era on the show, that element of mystery and the fact that he was setting up Ace to have this whole grander plot that we never really got to see on TV. We did of course get season 26 and the revelation within the Curse of Fenric that is also touched on within this story, having many different references to the Wolves of Fenric and of course the main events leading up to Dragonfire and her being zapped off from her bedroom to of course Iceworld. As well as that, we do also get some references to new series Doctor Who and kind of combining this adventure with the 7th Doctor and the 13th Doctor. I think it will be no surprise to say that there is a few cameos to the 7th Doctor within this story. However, it is a few brief cameos. It's not really to an extent that I would class it as a multi-Doctor story. If anything, the 7th Doctor stuff is just in there to provide context for the adventure that is currently going on with the 13th Doctor. Opening chapters are completely focused around Ace's life on Earth and what she's essentially achieved for herself, which is a lot. She's got a high-rise apartment in London that is seeing over the unit headquarters in the Tower of London, and we kind of have this rather slow start, which I did really appreciate because it nicely developed Ace as a character, and you got to know this version of Ace. We're getting used to the Ace now and what she's doing with her own life, and we are introduced to a few of the characters that she works with, all of which were very well padded out, and we also had that introduction of her previous relationship, which is no longer in. However, both of them are still good friends working together, and they are kind of using technology in order to benefit the world. It's a bit like Torchwood, however, I think less aggressive the way that Ace puts it, because there was a number of references to Torchwood in there as well. Naturally, one of my main criticisms for this book is we almost have a half point where the Earth-based established stuff at the very beginning, and then we kind of move into a more science fiction story within the later half, having the different companions separated into different locations. And I think that maybe from page 200 onwards, it did start to feel like a few aspects of the plot were falling away a little bit, and it would have been nice for that part of the story to have the approach that the earlier half of the book did have, a bit more slower in its pace, to kind of take time to breathe and establish the location that they were within, opposed to hopping from scene to scene to scene, which sometimes was a little bit hard to follow, but generally overall I did like it. It kind of felt action-packed and grand, which I suppose was what this book was meant to be achieving. You kind of have that urban stuff in the very beginning to represent Ace and her natural habitat, and then you kind of fling them all into a scenario that is very detached and different from that. We are introduced to the character of Will Buckland, who is essentially Ace's ex. However, he's not an ex where you are naturally made to hate him, like how quite a lot of media portrays. He is a character that you respect essentially within the book itself. He is very sciencey, he's up there with space and NASA and everything like that. And it's a really nice adventure to see him and Ace's relationship almost blossom again through the events of this story. However, not necessarily as a happy ending like they're going to get back together or anything like that. It was a nice way to introduce new characters that kind of established the life that Ace has had after the events of being with the Doctor. She's gone on to have her own life, do her own things, and it's nice to have a relationship within this story that does feel very real, and not just they've broke down, their relationship is no more, they now hate each other. It was something that I did really enjoy reading kind of unfold throughout the story's duration. Another absolutely brilliant inclusion is the reintroduction of Squeak, which you may be wondering, who is Squeak? Squeak is the child in Survival that was very, very sad because her cat died or something like that. The cheetah people or the master took her cat and she had a rather brief performance. However, of course, Ace knew her living around the same area and estate of Perryville. And in this story, we see who is now known as Chantel being a full-grown woman of 37 years old, and we see her in a normal life. She's become a model, and she is flung into this situation like having Ace's adventures with the Doctor. She goes into outer space, and she's a really lovely character. I think that Chantel is so well written, and she could very easily be a companion of the Doctor, which would be a very cool novelty, considering that you've brought someone out of Perryville many, many years ago, and they've become your companion, and then likewise again, many years later, somebody from a very similar background also becomes a companion of the Doctor. It's a nice parallel, and in this story, once more, we get to see her affected by the events and the alien of the piece, and we kind of get to see the relationship between Ace and Chantel. Almost the divide once again between them, how she's gone off and set up a charity, and then Chantal's gone off and became a model. And at this point in life, I think that she's having a little bit of a crisis. She's still going out at the age of 37, and she's kind of clinging on to those teenage years, and she kind of doesn't want to grow up as much. However, I think that this story kind of shows that, it kind of illustrates it, and she moves on, she has a learning curve. Likewise, you're also introduced to a character of Kim, who does do his own TV show / podcast, and he's essentially a TV presenter personality. At first, he is very, very annoying. He's one of those stereotypical annoying presenters that thinks he's brilliant and kind of can do magic shows on or something like that, and it's like the top 5 most mysterious things, blah blah blah. And within the story, once again, we start to see a more real side to his character, simply because of what he is exposed to out there in space. And it works very well. We get to see the relationship between Chantel and Kim, and we also get to see his relationship with the aliens of the piece, which is, he kind of is a light-hearted character. He is a bit clumsy in parts, however, at the same time, not the clumsy where you find him annoying. He's kind of the perfect balance, really. As for the Doctor and her TARDIS team, all of them are... It's possibly, if I was to compare this to the episodes of Doctor Who Series 12, this will be up there as one of the best stories of the series, because all of them are given things to do. We see the companions divided off into different locations. We have Graham and Ryan on a different spaceship. We have the Doctor going off on her own for a bit. You have Yaz also doing the same thing, going off and doing a little bit of investigative work. And all of them have a role. And in this story, we have the development of Ryan a bit more. We kind of have him dealing with a bit more of that teenager laddish kind of characteristic of seeing a rather attractive female and being a little bit attracted to them, sort of. And we have him kind of interacting with that, embarrassing himself a little bit. You have Graham in there as well that is pursuing that rather fatherly role, sort of looking after Ryan. There is a moment within this story where they kind of think that they've lost each other, and you see a little bit of emotion there. There's also this brilliant toxic relationship essentially between Yaz and Ace, and kind of Yaz coming to terms with the fact that she's a replacement and there has been many people before, because at this point they don't really know much about the Doctor's past, and we kind of have Yaz being a little bit awkward around Ace, not really trusting her because she deals with explosives, and Ryan and Graham also have a rather similar kind of vibe around her. She's not like your traditional companion that you would assume the Doctor would be friends with. And we kind of see Yaz having a little bit of a strop with the Doctor and realising that she is not this all-good character that she kind of once believed the Doctor was. It's a good development, and it's something that affects the whole story, and it kind of has impact. And I like to maybe bear in mind that this story could take place within the midpoint of Doctor Who Series 12, and we kind of... maybe this is a follow-up from that admittedly quite awkward few scenes within the early half of the series where the Doctor is quite obviously hiding something and not revealing to the rest of the TARDIS team what it is. I like to think that maybe those events within the series and that kind of put into this story, it's all built up and this is the cracking point. And essentially it is just a shame that this takes place within a book as opposed to being on the TV show, as the development of the characters seen throughout At Childhood's End is what I want from the TV show. Had every episode been like this, all the characters would feel real, and I would genuinely feel quite a sorry loss when they inevitably leave the show, which at the minute of what we're currently facing, with potentially Ryan and Graham leaving at the next episode within the festive season, I'm not really feeling much of a loss with their characters simply because of the lack of development that we've seen so far, that admittedly this story gives. That said, because this is a book, it does make development of characters a lot easier to do, because you are writing their feelings, you are writing their reactions, and it is much easier to get into a character's head than it is, I suppose, to portray it on screen. And finally, as for the aliens of the piece, we have kind of these half-horse, half-human characters which are rather mythical in their approach, and we kind of have them seeing the Doctor as an enemy due to some of the actions within the era of the Seventh Doctor, and we have that parallel between the two different eras, as I was mentioning before. There is also another character who's kind of behind it all, which I'm not going to go into, because I want you to find that out for yourself if you decide to buy this book. However, I think it would have been nice to see a bit more with him, maybe almost like a few prequel scenes or flashbacks to kind of establish his character a bit more, give him a bit more background, because at some points I couldn't help but feel he was a little bit of a cardboard cutout villain, kind of an all-seeing character that has power and has done things in the past, and because of that he's a bad man. He's kind of like that. He's one of those characters where he's done bad things. I want to see those bad things. Give me a chapter on, I don't know, these people that he's massacred, because that will make him feel a bit more like a threat, and I think that this story maybe needed that, which once again refers to what I was saying earlier about the early half being rather slow in its approach and relaxing, and then the next half kind of hopping from location to location to location. If it slowed down a bit and maybe provided that chapter to pad out the alien of the piece a bit more. That said, because it's hopping between those different locations, it does exercise the different characters of the piece very, very well, because you've got the Doctor, you've got Ace, you've got Kim, you've got Chantel, you've got Graham, you've got Ryan, and you've got Yaz. That's a whole 7 main characters that need development, and then arguably you've got Will Buckland in there within the early half, and then you have a few other minor characters in there, but at minimum you've got 8 whole characters, which, considering it's got 8 characters, and I'm comparing this to a TV story, a TV episode will struggle to do that, and I think that this book, as I say, handles it well, but that is because it's a book as opposed to a TV episode. But for me overall, my main criticism is that later half. I wish it was maybe 50 pages more, just to give a bit more development and a bit more time with different aspects of the plot. That science fiction-y stuff, I wanted to see more of that. And that is that. That is At Childhood's End, as written by Sophie Aldred. I think essentially if you are looking for a Doctor Who book to read and you like Ace as a companion, then this is definitely something that I recommend buying. It is by far, it's quite similar to Scratchman, where it is going to receive a lot of publicity because of the people behind it. Very much like Scratchman, Scratchman was undoubtedly produced because of the fans' dedication to the show, and had the show not really been that popular, no doubt Scratchman would have been an idea that died in the mists of history, very much like this story. It's one of those episodes or one of those books that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the fans' dedication, and essentially the passion that people have towards characters such as Ace that aired on TV in the 80s. This is very much a piece that is for the fans of that era, or maybe even want an introduction to Ace as a character. So if you wish to see her return on screen, for now, sadly, this is the book that is the episode that will depict that, as I've got a feeling, because this book exists, sadly, she won't be appearing on screen anytime soon. But that said, at the same time, if you want to see more of Ace, recently, of course, Big Finish have produced another story with older Ace, with A Charitable Earth called Dark Universe, featuring the 11 and Sylvester McCoy, which is the perfect accompaniment to this story, because I suppose the best thing about Doctor Who is it goes much more beyond the TV show itself. You've got a brilliant book adventure, you've got another audio drama adventure, and to be quite honest, for Sophie Aldred, I think this is only just the beginning for older Ace adventures to come in the future, as this book has definitely shown potential along with the Dark Universe story. So thank you very much for watching this review of Doctor Who At Childhood's End, as written by Sophie Aldred. I hope you have enjoyed it. Why not leave it in the comments section below your opinions of this book if you have read it. What did you like and dislike? What were your favourite moments? Please do keep your comments spoiler-free to an extent. If you feel the need to write about spoilers or different parts of the story that people may not wish to know before going into it, why not leave like a little spoiler warning or something like that, just for people who wish to read this book spoiler-free, do not end up reading it. But yeah, join me in more Doctor Who reviews in the future from many different areas that I do of course cover on this channel, from Doctor Who merchandise, books, audio dramas and everything else. So thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.